programs in prison. We have Trump University alumni on the government, and we have Sakura Kurasha on the opposition. Me chairing this round, Tomoko Yagasaki, along with Mika Ezaki-san as panelists. Without further ado, I'd like to call upon Prime Minister to open up the case with 7 minutes. You hear.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd like to propose a motion for following reasons. Number one, faith-based program drastically undermines rehabilitation and effective rehabilitation program. Secondly, a democratically elected government should not invoke controversial value to enhance public justice system. Separation between church and state should be very important criteria to consider. Let's move on to the model. Two things. First of all, we are okay with individual voluntarily read Bibles or doctrine if they want to. But what we oppose is, as a government, we should not use religion as the official criterion to enhance rehabilitation program. Secondly, what we defend on our side of the house is a standardized rehabilitation program, which is designed to practically facilitate rehabilitation, such as job training, volunteering, education, or periodic counseling with licensed medical personnel, or anger management program. And that kind of practical rehabilitation program is what we alternatively defend on our side of the house. So let's move on to the first argument about how faith-based rehabilitation undermines a proper rehabilitation and recovery. There are 5 reasons for that. Number one, the nature of religion is forgiveness. When you confess your crimes, your deed will be forgiven by the God. You are not born as an evil human beings in the first place. The social circumstance predispose individual to commit crimes. And that kind of narrative, that kind of understanding of the crime undermines the mechanism, the mental mechanism to regret. It undermines and dilutes the sense of retribution. For example, the reason why the tragedy is repeatedly happening in Christian community, such as child abuse and sexual harassment, is because of this kind of narrative that individuals are not to be blamed, but the social circumstances, so that they can shift the responsibility to external factors. This narrative of forgiveness is particularly dangerous when we consider the necessity of retribution and a sense of regret. No, thank you. Secondly, some doctrines are questionable and anti-democratic and unsecular. For example, some doctrines justify oppression of abortion, LGBT, women's rights, and euthanasia, and suicide. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, some criminals who committed hate speech, who committed crimes related to these kind of social values are able to justify their deed by utilizing the leverages, the religious institution, and represent our interpretation of certain doctrines. Therefore, this kind of a spiritual mechanism rather legitimizes what they did. No, thank you. Thirdly, even if they get released from prisons, the religious person can be antagonistic to other religious groups, for example. Some religions are exclusionary to existence of other counter-discourse and other religions. Therefore, it's very difficult for these individuals to engage with inclusive community building after getting released from religious prison. Fourthly, no thank you, lack of accountability. The spiritual and metaphysical conduct is hard to measure. The effect of spiritual and metaphysical activity is hard to measure compared to practical and more objectively designed rehabilitation program. What happens is that when the prisoners become role model, they can reduce the sentences and get out of the prisons. But what if the next crime happens? How is it possible for the state to explain the cause of the prison when the metaphysical or spirituality was the main source of rehabilitation? It's very unaccountable and hard to measure the effects of a recovery. Number 5, finally, the introduction of faith-based program undermines the incentive of prison and government to improve existing religious mechanisms, improve existing rehabilitation program. Because it's very cheap and it doesn't cost a lot for government or prison to outsource rehabilitation to churches or local religious institutions. It's easy option, an easy way out for government. Therefore, that radically undermines the incentive for the government and prison to improve the quality of existing counseling mechanism or existing anger management program and education program. And therefore, the resource is zero-sum. Go ahead.
If religion is ineffective in rehabilitation, why do you allow voluntary religious action? Don't think it's not mutual.
Because it's an extra option for this individual. And secondly, the freedom of religion itself is a fundamental human right, and we, as no state, has a right to invade that. But the problem is, as a publicly installed educational rehabilitation program, we should not invoke that kind of dangerous criteria. That is our second principle in this debate. Our second principle justification is about a separation between church and state. Democratically elected government should represent public and democratic interests. Therefore, secular value or democratic value should be the criterion for rehabilitation program. There are three logics for that. Number one, there is no universal consensus about the value and about the goods the religion publicly advocate for. As I explained before, certain religion oppress women's rights, or LGBT, or prohibit abortion, euthanasia, or suicide, or any other individual choices. Democratically government representing public will should not install such controversial value to prisoners. Religion is used to justify anti-social value. Secondly, specific religious interests are overly represented in prison. Please imagine the situation. Realistically speaking, it is not possible for religion to cover all diverse religions that exist in society because of logistic reasons or geographical reasons. There are not many, like an imam or Muslim institution in conservative Christian community, for example. It's very likely that the already strong local church or local strong privileged religious institutions are able to construct a relationship with local government and prison. Therefore, the interests and the ideology of a specific local religion or strong religion are overly represented and propagated to prisoners. And this is very unfair because the government should be equally accountable to all religious groups, but the prison is a place of propaganda for strong religious institutions to even further entrench and perpetuate their religious strength in the local community. And that is very unfair. Thirdly, this is exploitative. Prisoners and inmates are vulnerable. They are in weak positions. They have no other option but to accept whatever attractive option proposed by the prisons. Even if Islam or Christian religion does not necessarily maximize the happiness for that individuals, these inmates in prisons are prone to manipulation, prone to exploitation. It's very unfair for the religious institutions to resort to this kind of fear tactics in order to coercively reinforce their identities and ideology and brainwash inmates or prisoners to the extent that they can't really oppose that kind of imposition. Ladies and gentlemen, prison is not a place for propaganda of a specific religion, and oftentimes interpretation of religious doctrine is antithetical to democratic and social values and secular values. Therefore, the state should not invoke that kind of controversial criterion to enhance our public criminal justice system. We are happy to propose. Thank you.